Oh, Twinkie, order up.
Jeez, I'm coming. Here's your appetizer. One order of deep fried free thought.
Oh, I am so sick and tired of hearing about Rush. The Republicans are saying now that the liberals have been talking like this all along.
And there is some truth to that. There is some truth to the fact that there have been liberal commentators and people who have used not the best language describing women. But what's interesting about this is it gives us an opportunity to examine a logical fallacy that not very many people talk about. One you might not have heard of.
Oh?
Yes, it's called the Tu Quoque, or you might hear it pronounced Quoque, but we're going to use Quoque. It means basically you too. It's also called the argument from hypocrisy. Have you ever heard of it?
No, but I'm about to.
Yeah. So basically what the Tu Quoque fallacy is, it's when a claim is made and then you use hypocrisy as a way to attack the person making the claim rather than actually address the claim. For example, one of the examples on the website I'm looking at has, based on the arguments I've presented, it's evident that it's morally wrong to use animals for food and clothing. And then the other person says, but you're wearing a leather jacket. How can you say it's wrong? Yeah. The fallacy there is that you don't address whether or not it's morally wrong, which was the claim presented. You just turn around and say, but you do it. You know, it's like little kids on the playground. The Tu Quoque fallacy is basically accusing the other side of being hypocritical so that you don't have to address the substance of the claim.
Where the kid gets caught doing something and, to divert attention to himself, he immediately says, well, he was doing it too.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember one from my elementary school experience where one kid claimed that he saw another one picking his nose, and the one accused goes, well, you do it too. That's got nothing to do with the truth of the claim, but it's just a way to kind of deflect that criticism back onto the accuser. What's all this got to do with Rush Limbaugh? Well, we've got people coming out of the woodwork to defend him and his remarks that he made the other day about Sandra Fluke when he called her a slut and a whore and said basically that she needed to make amateur porn for him to watch since he was paying for her contraceptives.
That's just disgusting.
Yeah, we're not even going to dissect that because it should be apparent to anyone with a functioning brain that he doesn't understand how birth control works, he doesn't understand how insurance works, or if he does understand those things, he simply is a liar and doesn't care. So we're not going to go into that, but I wanted to read you just a little bit about what Sarah Palin said to defend him, which I have seen many other conservatives do.
Sarah Palin?
Yeah, you remember her. Alaska?
Yeah. Russia, Alaska?
Yeah, she can see Russia from her house.
Uh-huh.
I don't think she actually said it quite like that, but
Well,
but she stepped in to defend him, and the kind of defense that she's giving is pretty standard for all of the conservative defense of him.
Okay.
And she basically says that it was wrong for him to be called out because liberals do this stuff all the time. She says, and I quote, I think the definition of hypocrisy is for Rush Limbaugh to have been called out, forced to apologize and retract what it is that he said in exercising his First Amendment rights, and never is that the same applied to the leftist radicals who say such horrible things about the handicapped, and about women, and about the defenseless. So she's basically making the argument from hypocrisy here. The claim is that Limbaugh's comments calling Sandra Fluke a slut and a whore or a prostitute, that those comments were, I guess, unethical or outrageous or wrong in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than address that claim, she says, but the leftists do it.
They do it too.
Right. And they may or may not. I know that Bill Maher said some things. I know Ed Schultz called Laura Ingraham a slut, and he apologized for that.
Just something I want to point out.
Mm-hmm.
There are, obvious liberals that have made these comments.
Yeah.
But they've apologized.
Some of them have, yeah.
Publicly.
And he was suspended also for a few days without pay.
Yeah. But the difference here that I've seen is Rush may have apologized, but prior to that, he doubled and tripled down on what he said.
Yeah.
So any apology after that is basically an insult.
And it wasn't even really an apology. It was he never said, I'm sorry that I mischaracterized this woman and that I put words in her mouth and made her say things she didn't say. He says, I just had a bad choice of words. It's like, it's fine that I lied about her and misrepresented her, but, I just should have used some sweeter words doing it. A total not apology.
Right. Dancing around it just enough to make his bosses
If
happy.
he wants to look at what a real apology looks like, he needs to listen to Ed Schultz. Apology to Laura Ingraham, or even better, I think Cal Thomas's apology to Rachel Maddow, which he's a conservative, and he said some things about her, and I think he ended up taking her out to lunch and apologizing, which was really classy. But back to the fallacy here. The fallacy is, just let's not even address whether he was right or wrong to say these things. Let's just say, but the left does it too. That is your Tu Quoque fallacy.
Tu Quoque.
Yes.
Is it Latin?
It is. It's Latin for you too. Don't blame me. You do it too.
Yeah.
Okay, she goes on and says, I'm not going to wait for apologies from the left ever, and you shouldn't either. They won't come. You won't get apologies from people like Bill Maher or all the other leftists who have said some of the most horrible, despicable things about us, and people like Sarah Palin. That was Rush Limbaugh talking. They get rewarded for those despicable things. They get to make movies out of their despicable things and amplify them. Again, this is a form of this same fallacy. It's not, I did something wrong. It's, oh, look, they do it too. Nobody's over there questioning them, which is not true. I know it hasn't gotten as much coverage, but, those issues were dealt with.
Yeah, they were.
They were dealt with by the networks. The networks, I know they gave Ed Schultz a suspension.
There were repercussions that were done. There were fines or, suspensions made.
Yeah.
There were public apologies that were made.
Right. And it was the same thing, remember, with Don Imus and his comment about the nappy-headed hose, remember? And he got taken off the air. So, people make mistakes, and they have to abide by the consequences of it. But nobody has addressed the initial question. Was what Rush Limbaugh said unethical or not? Is it wrong to call someone a slut and a prostitute if they're not?
I believe so.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter if it's Rush Limbaugh who says it or Nathan Piccolo or Twinkie D. If you slander someone, it is unethical and it's wrong.
Especially his soapbox or platform or whatever. He's such a I guess you would call it public icon. He's looked up to and listened to by millions of people.
Supposedly.
Hopefully that number is dwindling. And another thing, his broadcast is also being put out on the, I believe it's the Armed Forces Radio.
Wow.
So you have all these military personnel that are listening to this. And if you thought women in the military had it rough to begin with, if you're bombarded with this kind of misogyny, what kind of viewpoint do the men have towards the women in the military now?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up about misogyny because, we've had this kerfluffle in the atheist community for some time now. That women are not exactly always made to feel welcome. And like I've said before, that has generally not been my experience. But I know it has been that experience for many other women.
Yes, it has.
Guys, if you want to know what misogyny looks like and feels like, then Rush Limbaugh is the place to look. And if you think you're funny and cool because you're talking about rape and laughing and joking about stuff like that and and you don't see that there's anything wrong with it, there's no need for feminism, just remember, you sound like Rush Limbaugh. You really do. And I'm not talking about just simply things like asking a girl out or, appreciating the way a girl looks, but I'm talking about actual misogyny where you think that women are just less than you.
Yeah,
or you treat them as
treat
less.
them as dirt.
Yeah. So, don't be a Rush Limbaugh. We don't need that.
Don't pull a Limbaugh.
Yeah,
Cool.
And I'm sorry, but it shouldn't be too difficult to figure out that, you don't say everything that goes through your brain. I mean, think about it. If I said everything that went through my brain, it would be crazy, because, there are just some things you don't say.
Yep.
You can think them.
Time and a place for everything.
Right, so obviously there is still a need for gender equality, and obviously I think you can see how ugly misogyny is. Yeah. It's terribly ugly. That's a sidetrack to get back to the point of the fallacy.
Okay.
That's really all I had. If someone attacks you like that, then you have to hold them to addressing the claim, okay?
If he's not held to be responsible for the words that he's said, for anything he said towards someone that slanders him, then if it's not addressed now, then you will eventually become desensitized to it, and it'll become commonplace. And this is not something we want.
No,
Do not want misogynistic attitude to become dominant, or it just needs to be put an end to.
Well, one would hope, that eventually things would change enough where people would uh, welcome gender equality. But we still have a long way to go, and this proves it.
Yep. Kind of sets us back a little bit, but
Well,
we're not going to sit down and take it.
It's because these things are getting brought to light now. We're able to shine a light on it, where in the past it was just part of the culture. Women had their place, and it was in the kitchen or, wherever. And, now things are changed, and it shows you how out of step with the modern world people like him are. That they think they can say that, and, half of America's population's not going to go, excuse me? The hell?
Yeah. And I might point out that you said half America's population. For every 100 males, there's 106 females.
Yeah, so that's what, like 52?
No, it's
53?
it's 49.6 males to 50.4.
Okay, so it's slightly more than half.
It's slightly tilted, but it's still, if 50% of your population is female, I really would want them against me.
Yeah, really. And that's one reason why I disagree with Bill Maher. He said that, the left just needs to accept Rush's apology and move on, and this intimidation by pulling sponsors is a bad thing. I disagree. Boycotting,
take away his microphone.
Pulling sponsors and stuff like that is the public's way of non-violently dealing with stuff like this.
Exactly.
And that's why, the AFA is perfectly within their rights to call for boycotts, and we're perfectly within our rights to call for Karen mobs.
Yep.
And, whoever puts the most pressure on these people wins, at least for a time. There's nothing wrong with that. That is what takes the place of armed conflict. Mm-hmm. You boycott something, or you carrot mob it, rather than going and putting, spraying the place down with a machine gun.
Right.
We're trying to become more civilized. But as far as the fallacy goes, once again, it's called Tu Quoque. And just think of that as your shield. You have this logical fallacy shield that you can hold up. You make a claim and somebody shoots it right back at you and says, well, you do it. You just hold the shield up and say, yeah, but that doesn't address, the validity of my argument. Let's talk about the claim. Is the claim true or false?
That's right.
So that's your argument from hypocrisy. People will try to use it on you, and
because you use it too.
Well, we all do without thinking.
Yeah.
But as part of a good argument or debate, it's something that we need to watch out for. And so when someone attacks you with this you too, like you've done the same thing, you hypocrite. If you have, admit it. If you haven't, don't, and say, but that that's doesn't matter. That's not what we're talking about.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, because I can sit here and say, Nathan, you need to quit eating those chips, because that stuff's not good for you, and he can look over here at me and say, well, what are you doing with chips on your desk?
Crunch, crunch, crunch.
Yeah. And maybe I am a bit of a hypocrite, but the claim is still true. Eating a ton of chips is not a good idea.
No, it's not. And I don't.
Yeah, and I don't either. But that's the Tu Quoque fallacy.
Tu Quoque.
That's your Latin for today.
Yay.
Courtesy of Rush Limbaugh and Sarah Palin.
Wait, they actually contributed something?
Yep.
Okay.
They can't keep it classy, but they can keep it fallacious for you.
There you go.
All right.
Well, I'm taking my pie to go.
Yep.
See ya.
Check, please.
Hey, Twinkie, we're not making any money. You sitting around talking to all the customers.
All right. Well, I guess that's all the time we have for this course today. But keep checking back in with us for our daily specials and appetizers and our main course soon to come.
Main course, what you think this is? 3-star restaurant?